Hello to you! Today we're going to journey together to one of the most bizarre and tumultuous periods in Iranian history, a story that revolves around a very special character, Khosrow II, or as he was known, Khosrow Parviz, who was given the epithet the Victorious. He was the last great Sasanian king of kings, right before the entire dynasty collapsed. It's truly strange, isn't it? The story of Khosrow Parviz is like a tragedy, from the pinnacle of power to the depths of defeat. He was someone who managed to nearly bring the powerful Byzantine Empire, Persia's eternal enemy, to its knees and expand Iran's borders to a glory reminiscent of the Achaemenid era. But how did this seemingly victorious ruler end up being overthrown? And more importantly, how did his fall cause the entire Sasanian dynasty to crumble? This is the question we want to answer using historical sources. So, where does the story begin? Khosrow was the grandson of the famous Anushirvan and the son of Hormizd IV. He became king in 590 AD after his father, but his reign began with anything but peace. The rebellion of Bahram Chobin occurred. Bahram was one of the most powerful and popular generals in the army who revolted, and Khosrow came under so much pressure that he was forced to flee Iran. And where did he go? Unbelievably, to the long-standing enemy, Byzantium. He sought refuge with Emperor Maurice. Maurice helped him reclaim his throne in 591. Of course, this help wasn't free. Khosrow had to pay a heavy price, ceding important parts of Armenia and Mesopotamia to Byzantium. This formed a temporary but fragile alliance between them. This peace did not last long. The turning point came in the year 602 AD. Emperor Maurice, the same man who had helped Khosrow, was killed in an internal coup by one of his commanders named Phocas. Khosrow seized this opportunity and, under the pretext of avenging the blood of his ally, declared war. Of course, many believe this was just an excuse and that Khosrow was pursuing his own expansionist goals and wanted to reclaim the territories he had previously given away. This was the beginning of a war that would last for more than 2 decades. This war, at least initially, went very well for the Persians. Between the years 602 and about 622, it was a period of remarkable conquests for the Iranian army. The Sasanian army, under the command of famous generals like Shah Baraz and Shaheen, seemed almost unstoppable. First, they reclaimed the very territories they had previously ceded. Then, they advanced deep into Byzantine territory. They conquered major cities like Dara, Edessa, Syria, Palestine, and large parts of Anatolia, modern-day Turkey. It reached a point where, in 614 AD, they captured Jerusalem, and a very significant and symbolic event took place. They brought the true cross, the cross upon which Christians believe Jesus was crucified, to Ctesiphon, the Persian capital, as a spoil of war. This was a great religious and political humiliation for Byzantium. The conquests continued, and in 618 they also conquered Egypt, which served as Byzantium's granary. The Persian army even reached Chalcedon, right across from the walls of Constantinople, the Byzantine capital. Byzantium was on the verge of total collapse. In this very dire situation, the new Byzantine emperor Heraclius came to power. His situation was so bad that he even considered moving the capital from Constantinople to Carthage in North Africa. He was almost in despair. He tried several times to make peace with Khosrow, but Khosrow, at the height of his pride and power, rejected his offers and even sent him a very humiliating letter in which he called himself the Lord of the Earth and Heraclius his vile slave. This excessive pride would later prove to be his undoing. From around the year 622, the tables turned completely. Heraclius, seeing no other way but to fight, made several very intelligent moves. First, with the help of the church, he raised money and rebuilt his army. Then, unlike other emperors, he donned his armor and took command of the army himself, which greatly boosted the morale of his soldiers. But his most important move was his strategy. Instead of trying to retake the lost cities one by one, he chose a very bold strategy, a direct attack on the heart of Iran. He moved his army through the Black Sea and the Caucasus into Azerbaijan, and even destroyed the great fire temple of Adur-Gushnasp, one of the most sacred Zoroastrian sites, to strike a symbolic blow against the Persians. On the other hand, he allied with the Western Turkic Khaganate, the northern enemies of the Sasanians. This forced Iran to fight on two fronts, putting immense pressure on it. The climax of this saga was the Battle of Nineveh. In the dead of winter, Heraclius moved his army towards Mesopotamia, the center of Sasanian rule. Khosrow sent a new army under the command of a general named Razov to confront him. The two armies faced each other near the ruins of the ancient city of Nineveh. It was here that Heraclius's tactics determined the outcome. On the morning of the battle, a thick fog covered the area. Heraclius used this fog to reduce the effectiveness of the skilled Persian archers. Then he employed a deceptive tactic, feigning a retreat. The Persian army, thinking the Byzantines were fleeing, began a disorganized pursuit. As soon as their military formation broke, Heraclius suddenly ordered a halt and a counterattack. The Byzantines turned and charged with full force at the surprised Persian army. An intense battle raged for about 8 hours. In the end, Razov, the commander of the Persian army, was killed in battle, and the organized resistance of the Sasanian army completely collapsed. After this decisive victory, there was no one left to stop Heraclius. He continued his advance and even plundered the magnificent palace of Dastgird, Khosrow's favorite residence near Ctesiphon. Khosrow, who had lost control of the situation, fled from Ctesiphon. The successive defeats, the prolonged war, the economic damages, and perhaps Khosrow's excessive pride and stubbornness caused the nobility and army commanders to lose hope in him and take action against him. Finally, in 628 AD, an internal coup led by Khosrow's own son, Shiro, Kavad II, took shape. Khosrow Parviz was arrested and murdered in prison. Immediately after coming to power, Shiro requested peace from Heraclius. Heraclius, who had achieved all his goals and was himself weary of the war, accepted. The terms of the peace were that Iran would return all occupied territories, release prisoners, pay war indemnities, and most importantly, return the true cross to Jerusalem. The war with Byzantium was over, but Iran was immediately plunged into a much deeper and more devastating internal crisis: civil war. A bloody rivalry began between various aristocratic factions, especially the two powerful groups, the Parsig in the south and west, and the Pahlav, the old families of the north and east. The country descended into a period of complete chaos. Within just a few years, numerous kings and even two queens, like Borondokt and Azarmiddocht, came to power and were quickly killed or deposed. This instability virtually destroyed the central authority. It was in the midst of this turmoil that, in 632 AD, the nobles finally agreed on one person, Yazdegerd III, Khosrow Parviz's grandson. But he inherited a severely weakened, war-torn, and fragmented empire. And it was this extreme weakness that prevented the Sasanian Empire from mounting effective resistance against the next threat, the invasions of the Muslim Arabs, which began just a few years later. These invasions ultimately led to the complete fall of the Sasanian dynasty in 651 AD. It is truly a story full of lessons. From the peak of military victories to defeat in a key battle, the fall of a powerful king, and then civil war and final collapse. The fate of Khosrow Parviz shows how pride, miscalculation, and the inability to recognize the right time for peace can bring even the most powerful to the brink of destruction. And this brings us to that final question that might be worth thinking about. Could Iran's fate have been different if Khosrow Parviz had accepted Heraclius's peace offer sooner, perhaps at the height of his power? Or if that devastating civil war among the nobles had not occurred after his death. We'll never really know, but it's interesting to think about. This is the legacy of this last great war of antiquity left behind for the world we live in today.